What's up, guys? Welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host, Caleb. If you want to support me, you can support me using that TCGplayer link in the description down below, or as always, just liking, commenting, subscribing will do the trick. Now, let's get into today's Deck Tech with Tivit. This commander was suggested by my Patreons. If you guys want to suggest more commanders and have more say on what Deck Techs I cover, becoming a Patreon is a solid option for that. Now, let's get into this deck tech. This is going to be a Tivit deck, and honestly, this guy's pretty broken. He has protection, he has flying, and then you just create 5 artifacts every turn, which can draw you cards and generate mana. Yeah, this guy's busted. We will not be including Time Sieve because honestly, that might be a little too degenerate for me. Just getting infinite turns over and over again, nah, it just wins the game outright. It's a little too easy for the grindy games I enjoy. So instead, we are going to play as much taxing effects as possible and just be super annoying. We're going to play Smothering Tithe, Rhystic Study, ask as many questions as possible, and probably talk the most in the game, and that's how we're going to get our enjoyment out of it. And then we are going to overrun our opponent with all of these clue tokens, treasure tokens, and of course food tokens, because you know we are running Academy Manufacturer. This way, we can just throw something like Cyberdrive Awakener onto the battlefield, reanimate them all, and then attack for lethal. Another thing that ends the game pretty quickly is obviously Mirkwood Bats, with the amount of treasure tokens we will be creating and tokens in general. Additionally, we do run a few ways to copy our Tivit because multiple Tivits is more broken, double broken in fact. So if that sounds like something you'd like to get into and a deck tech you'd like to watch, let's get into this. Let's kick it off with the main strategy of this deck, getting as many artifacts as possible onto the battlefield. Academy Manufacturer is insane in this deck. Instead of creating 5 tokens, you're just going to create 15. This will give you all the treasure tokens, all the clue tokens, and the food tokens you could want. Mondrak and Anointed Processions are just going to double up on all that token generation. We have Spark Double and Helm of the Host to go ahead and make token copies of our commander. That way we are just generating more clues and more treasure tokens. I also like running Urza here. Not only will we get a massive construct out of this guy, but we'll get the ability to tap all of our artifacts for mana. And then, you know, he's got that broken ability that we might use here and there. We also run Dadbot Urza, mostly because, again, we want those constructs, and this guy does have affinity for artifacts, so that's going to be solid. Min Wily Illusionist is going to be another way to just create some tokens and, you know, cheat stuff into play. Notably, you can put lands into play with her, so that's extremely useful. Darksteel Splicer. We do have a blink strategy in the deck, and that's mostly why this card is in the deck. And even still, it creates some amazing blockers because those golems will be indestructible and extremely hard to get through. Alondra Skydreamer. Again, we're just creating some chump blockers here, and there is a solid way to end out the game if we get to draw enough cards. Mirkwood Bats. This card just wins games. Get this and Academy Manufacturer on the battlefield, and you will be dealing an insane amount of damage to your opponents. They won't be able to stop you. Marionette Master works very similarly, and if that doesn't work for you, we can slam a Cyberdrive Awakener onto the battlefield, reanimating all of those artifacts, and then we can just swing out for the win that way. Kappa Cannoneer can get extremely massive in this deck. He's in here mostly because honestly it's going to be pretty fun just to swing this giant turtle at someone. We also have Masterful Replication. This is another way we can animate all of our artifacts. I like to copy the constructs, but if you can't get one of them, copying one of the indestructible golems is going to be also pretty solid. Illusion of Choice is going to be another amazing card in the deck because we can just create 5 treasure tokens with this essentially, or if we need the clues, we can grab the clues, but 9 times out of 10 we're just like, give me those 5 treasure tokens. Spellskite is also an amazing card in the deck. He does have Ward 3, but hey, paying 4 mana for a Path to Exile is definitely worth it to get a Tivit off the board, so just having this guy on the board is going to be another solid form of protection, making sure Tivit isn't going anywhere. Thada Adele. I really like this girl because she's just going to steal everybody's soul ring, getting Tivit out that much faster. I mean, play this girl turn 3, and as long as you ramped turn 2, which is really what we're trying to do in this deck, you grab that soul ring and boom, you got a turn 4 Tivit. We also run Enlightened Tutor. It's just going to make the deck a lot more consistent. Late game, we're grabbing that Academy Manufacturer or that Cyberdrive Awakener, and then early game, we can grab anything from a Smothering Tithe to even a Black Market Connections. Last but not least, we have Expropriate. This card literally just wins you the game in this deck. It's that simple. With Tivit, you can cast it super early because of the treasure tokens, and then you get a vote an additional time. It's just busted in the deck. Moving on, we do run a couple blink effects just for that added benefit of getting more artifacts onto the battlefield, because Tivit's honestly broken. Essence Flux and Ephemerate are going to be super solid for this. We also run Sword of Hearth and Home. Now, I know it will unequip it from our commander whenever we blink it, but you already generated all of those treasure tokens. Paying an extra 2 mana to put the sword back on Tivit is not going to be a super hard thing to do. Yorion and Brago. There is a lot of blink effects in the deck, so having mass blink effects is going to generate a ton of value. Thassa Deep Dwelling is just a solid way to get some reliable blink. And then we have Displacer Kitten. This card can go absolutely insane in the deck because whenever we're blinking our Tivit, we're getting more mana. More mana means we can cast more spells, and casting more spells means we can blink more stuff with Displacer Kitten. Soul Herder. Not only does this guy get massive in the deck, again, he's just a solid way to blink our Tivit. And then we have Preston. Imagine every time we blink one of those non-token creatures, we get a token copy of it. The illusion will also pair pretty well with Min Wiley, but again, that's not the goal of this. The goal is just to double up on all of those ETBs essentially with more tokens, which are more artifacts. It gets pretty insane. You will have to sacrifice the Tivit copy to the legend roll, but you will still get the ETB. And I know what you're thinking, guys. Where is Deadeye Navigator? And this is another card, same as Time Sieve, that I excluded from the deck on purpose. It just seems too good. It's a 1-card combo with your commander. Pair it with him, you start blinking your commander, you get the 2 treasure tokens to blink him again, and then you just get infinite artifact tokens. Pair this with something like Illusion of Choice, and you can even draw your deck because you can create 4 treasure tokens, 1 clue, sack 2 to draw a card. It's definitely too busted for my playstyle, so I thought I'd let you know why I excluded it. Moving on to card advantage, we have Thought Monitor and Mold Drifter. With all the blink, we can just blink these guys and draw a lot of cards. Something to note about Evoke, if you evoke this guy and then blink him, you won't have to sacrifice him, so that's also very abusable. Shimmer Dragon seems like a no-brainer since we're generating all of those artifacts. Now we could just tap our clue tokens to draw cards instead of sacking them for 2 mana. Marnius Calgar has an insane interaction with our commander. Now, 9 times out of 10, you're going to create 2 treasure tokens because you get a vote, right? So you want 2 treasure tokens for mana, and then they're gonna probably give you 3 clue tokens. Now, you would think, hey, that all happens at the same time, you'll draw 1 card off of Marnius Calgar. Not exactly. While that's true for treasure tokens, you'll generate them all at once. It's not true for the investigation triggers, for all of the clue tokens you'll produce. So since each investigation trigger has to happen individually, Marnius Calgar will trigger for every time we investigate. So now our opponents are actually left with a hard choice. Do we give him treasure tokens so he doesn't get as much card draw, or do we give him clue tokens because they're not as good as treasure tokens? And then if you need the card draw, you can just say, hey, I investigate twice, and boom, you're getting the card draw anyway. Marnius Calgar is busted, especially with all the other token generation in the deck. We also have Esper Sentinel and Rhystic Study in the deck. We gotta keep demanding people to pay taxes or give us extra benefits. We also have Phyrexian Arena and Black Market Connections. I found that you really want your card draw out early, that way you can just ramp in the Tivit as fast as possible, and then these cards don't matter anymore because Tivit is his own engine. It's actually insane. Archivist of Ogma also makes the list. A little incidental life gain never hurt anybody, and honestly, this guy triggers a lot more than you think he would. And last but not least, we have Windfall, because this card's basically unmatched at refilling your hand. Moving on to ramp, we went super hard into the early game ramp with Wayfarer's Bauble, Soul Ring, all of the talismans, and then all of the signets. This is going to almost guarantee that we always have one in our starter and really start ramping to that Tivit. Krark Clan Ironworks is going to be amazing in the deck. Now everything just generates mana. We can even sacrifice a treasure token to crack a clue. It's very useful in this deck. Archaeomancer's Map. Not only will this make sure we are keeping up with everybody else as far as ramp goes, it's also on an ETB, which we have a lot of ways to abuse. Something people might not think about with this card is it literally draws you 2 cards whenever it ETBs. Yes, those cards have to be plains, but you're still drawing 2 cards. We have Smothering Tithe. Again, this is going to be busted with Marnius Calgar, and it's just busted in general, keeping on with that theme of taxing our opponents or giving us extra value. Solemn Simulacrum, another ETB that's going to ramp us, and in a pinch we can sack it to draw a card. I like it. Moving on to removal, we have our standard stuff with Generous Gift and Anguished Unmaking. We have Lauren of the Third Path and Noxious Gearhulk to get in on that ETB removal, and then we have have an Offer You Can't Refuse, Swan Song, and Arcane Denial to just counter any spells that are trying to get rid of our Tivit, or if they're trying to win the game. Mandate of Abaddon's going to be pretty awesome because Tivit's a big boy. Austere Command's going to be flexible, and then we have Cyclonic Rift for the ultimate F you, I'm going to win the game from here. That's going to do it for the deck tech, guys. Remember, if you want to become a part of voting for these deck techs, or you just want to support me, check out the Patreon. As always, I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors, and I will see you in the next one.